an estimated $1.4 billion is being spent every year in disability payments linked to narcotic painkillers. And now some states are looking to issue guidelines on how and when painkillers can be prescribed. But is this the right way to tackle the problem? Let's ask Dr. Sreedhar Potarazu, CEO of Vital Spring Technologies, for his take. I am told that I can call you Dr. P. That is very gracious.
Absolutely, you can. Thank you for having me on.
Our pleasure. Now, let me ask you, in doing research for this conversation, I found that it seems like the system favors prescribing drugs and painkillers over therapy, and that may be part of what's causing the problem. Is that true?
It is true, Melissa, because it's easier for the doctors to write a prescription just for the symptom as opposed to actually treating the specific problem. And remember that often the pain could be just the tip of the iceberg of a bigger underlying problem, whether it's a work-related injury, often depression. And so the overuse of prescriptions for painkillers is a huge part of this. And so that drives the economics for employers and to the bottom line of corporations for what they are paying.
So in the short term, they might do this because it might be cheaper. You know, a pill is obviously cheaper than hours and hours of physical therapy. But in the long term, it actually ends up being more expensive. Why?
Because for every dollar that's spent on health care for the worker in the United States, about 60 cents actually goes towards disability and workers' comp related costs. Only 40 cents goes to typical medical problems. Many companies have not been able to tackle this. So if they just put a Band-Aid on the problem and just treat the pain and not the underlying problem, as an example, low back pain is a huge issue with many employers today. But they don't treat that. I mean, they may treat it with pain medication, but they're not looking at occupational hazards or physical therapy or other modalities that will actually get to the root cause of the problem, because the cost of lack of productivity, not having the employees at work, has a huge hit to the bottom line.
So, I mean, I have to wonder what's the solution, because if you have insurance companies sort of dictating the rules, they're looking for the cheapest solution, and you can't blame them because they are a business and they have shareholders in most cases. If you let the government sort of create guidelines, that always makes me nervous. What do you think is the solution to get everybody the right treatment?
Well, it's got to start at the top of the totem pole, Melissa. So the people that are bearing the brunt of the financial burden, the major employers and corporations, need to step up. And they need to start being more aggressive with insurance companies and then down the line with doctors in terms of what they're expecting, the adherence to certain guidelines. They need to make sure that information is shared freely in terms of what things really cost. Once we get to that level of transparency and the buyer starts to take charge, we're going to start to bend the cost curve. And maybe things will change after the law is overturned at the end of this month.
Okay, Dr. P, thank you so much for your insight and interesting discussion.